What's the dumbest thing you believed as a kid? My grandpa told me that I could grow rocks. He took me outside and grabbed a rock with me, then we put it in a jar of water. I watched it for a while waiting for it to grow, but it never did. So I took a nap, and when I woke up the rock was a lot bigger. I was so excited and confused. Then I went and ate dinner with my grandma, and when we got back to their house there was a bunch of pebbles along with my rock. The bastard had babies. Turns out rocks can't really grow, and my grandpa was just fucking with me. Oh well. The moon follows me. I thought this as well. I thought it wanted to be my friend. I was scared. Told my mum, but she barely blinked an eye. Lol. She had to use all available energy to contain her disappointment in you. I guess my dumb belief stems from the fact that I didn't have a good concept of distance or geography in general. I thought my parents didn't take me to see the pyramids in Egypt or Disney World because they were just too uninterested to make the drive. I lived in Puerto Rico at the time. I thought that the olden days were actually black and white. I convinced my little brother of this when he was little. I told him that color was invented by the US Army in an effort to win the Cold War. I told him that in 1953 the US used old WWII bomber planes to drop color molecules onto Canada to use it as a side effects test. As there were no weird side effects, they spread it into the Western world and eventually the rest of the world. I told him it took years due to international trade agreements and treaties, which is why there was a period where some movies were in color and some weren't. He believed me for years. He eventually asked more and more questions, so I had to make up this grand historical narrative to explain the history of color to him. He still jokes about it years later. My mom told me she knew when I did something wrong. I interpreted this to mean she could read minds. Therefore, all women could read minds. I then spent my time staring at my crushes thinking I like you over and over, trying to get them to notice me. Thanks for making me the weird kid, Mom. My mom used to tell me she knew about all the naughty things I'd been doing, and then give me the opportunity to confess in exchange for a lighter sentence. It took a while for me to figure out how she always knew. Wait, did she know because you would confess, or was there some other reason for her knowing? She didn't know what I was doing until I was tricked into giving a full confession. My time to shine. My mum used to buy the TV Guide every week, which we would both read. I thought that all the directors and producers of TV shows used to read it and had a week to make the program that the guide said would happen. I thought TV episodes were filmed one at a time and they had 1 week to film and edit it. I recently had a conversation with a grown man who didn't understand why the writers of The Walking Dead weren't listening to the fans before putting out the new episodes every week. I asked what he meant, and he said the fans are literally telling them what they want to see, and the writers are still doing the opposite every week. Apparently he thought that the after show Talking Dead was meant for the writers to figure out what to make the following week's show about. That said, that would make for a cool idea for a show. Maybe for a little while. But democracy isn't a great writing method. I believed that when you took a bath, it would water your hair like a plant and your hair would grow. Genius. I thought farm was spelled D-I-E-I-O. I know spelling rarely makes sense, but this is ridiculous. Lightning bolts were actually bolts that, if you found one, could cut through anything. Us kids would try to search for one after it stopped raining. This is actually adorable. Maybe a good plot for a children's book. Plot twist. The two main protagonists are Zeus 1, 223, 458th and 1, 223, 462nd illegitimate children respectively. My dad can't smell. He was just born without the ability. I had all sisters growing up, so the only guy I really spent much time around was my dad. And I genuinely believed, until I was like 13, that only women could smell. Men's cologne and manly scents were also a surprise to me, since my dad couldn't smell. He never wore scented deodorant, or used any cologne or scented soap. I don't know what it smells like, and I don't want to accidentally pick a bad smell. So I just prefer unscented. I don't know what it smells like, and I don't want to accidentally pick a bad smell. So I just prefer unscented. That's actually very wise. It would be wiser just to ask his wife what aftershave she likes and wear that until he gets to work and finds out he smells like lilacs. You know all those drinking and driving commercials? I was 8 before I realized they didn't mean Pepsi and Coke, just alcohol. Right there with you. I thought my dad was a hardened criminal drinking his huge mug of coffee each morning. I thought Michael Jackson was cruel and evil. Thought vegans were Las Vegas locals. Partially true. I thought the turn signals in the car read the driver's mind and turned on automatically. Same with the windshield wipers. Totally thought they sensed the rain and turned on themselves. Wait, my BMW's turn signals aren't automatic? That however many times you had sex was how many kids you'd have. I was pretty young, but I specifically remember thinking who? Grandma and grandpa had sex 5 times. If you're Catholic this is true. Well there's the poop hole loophole. My father has 11 siblings. The poop hole loophole was unknown in 1940s Newfoundland. I mean, if you're a sufficiently devout Catholic, some other denominations also qualify. You believe that there is no poop hole loophole. The official stance has historically been that if whatever sex act you're doing can't someone pregnant, it's sinful. The acceptability of contraceptive/abortion and that interpretation has changed over the centuries. But the Catholic Church is nothing if not steadfast in its proclamations, and back in the day those had a lot more power to compel people. Anal, oral, and any variety of masturbation are all on the list of prohibited sex acts the Catholic Church drew up back in the day. Also, 1940s Newfoundland isn't too far removed from the bad old days of really high infant mortality rates and the era when you had lots of kids so that you had extra hands to do work. A kid doesn't have to be very old before they can produce more value in labor than they consume in food. Some of my ancestors worked in the coal mines of Cape Breton from a very young age for precisely that reason. Thankfully my grandparents did pretty well in spite of the collapse of the coal/steel industry and the cod fishery. My sister had me convinced that chocolate milk came from brown cows. They feed them a lot of chocolate and it mixes with the white milk to come out chocolate milk. My parents caught on when I said I wanted brown cow milk because they mixed it better than they did with chocolate syrup. If you feed a cow enough whiskey, does it make Baileys? No, but it makes for one hell of a night. During the 2000 presidential election, I was just old enough to understand the idea of what was happening. I at least knew who Gore and Bush were. There was an old couple at my church named Mr. and Mrs. Gore. And one Sunday morning I whispered to my mom, "Is that Al Gore's mommy and daddy?" My mom shushed me. For what I now realize is because I wasn't actually whispering. But for years I thought she shushed me because I had stumbled upon this huge secret of who Mr. and Mrs. Gore were and we couldn't tell anybody. I had 2 teachers at my school with the same surname and thought they were married. I was older than I'd like to admit. To be fair, I would automatically think that now. I thought if you converted a MP3 to a MP4 it would magically become a video. That would have been a very neat Easter egg. If it was true though, maybe the MP3 would become one of those trippy Windows music player graphics when converted to MP4. I loved watching these as a kid. I still love watching them. I thought that a period was just where you peed blood. I think that might be a common misconception among kids though. Had to explain this to a 33-year-old man recently. He thought that you went to the toilet and just thought bleed to make it come out a couple of times a day. That streets and roads named after cities would take you to that city. This is somewhat true. In Southern California, the freeways are also named after the city they lead to. The 91 East is named the Riverside Freeway and leads to Riverside, CA, and I believe the 57 North, at least in some places, is called the Anaheim Freeway. Nobody actually calls the freeways here by name though. We just use the number and cardinal direction. Why do Californians put the before every highway number? We do it here in Az too. When I lived in TN everyone thought it was weird when I'd say take the 24 to the 40 to the 65. That's just how West Coasters speak, I guess. Never realized it until this thread. I have been in almost every region of the country, and only around the West Coast do they have the prefix attached to highway names. I'm just so used to hearing something like Take 35 south to 6. Then 6 to 45 south. Apostrophe. Not me, but my fiance. She believed that sausages were pig dicks. And she still ate them. How's the sex? I'm always careful that playing hide the sausage doesn't turn into a game of sausage hostage. I didn't comprehend that escalator stairs could happen more than once. I envisioned them just piling up under the floor with an endless supply of new stairs at the beginning. Child of the Consumption Society. Huh. Well, they're usually seen in malls. My dad said we had to be quiet in planes because if we made too much noise the pilot would get distracted and take us to the wrong place. That one is good though. Probably made your seatmates very happy. Yes, we had practical parents. We would just whisper. I used to turn the Pepsi can or bottle so that the 4 best taste drink by date label was facing me. Legitimately thought for years as a kid that this made it magically taste better. My dad used to call bad drivers cocksuckers. We also had a small chicken farm. I thought he meant literally sucking on roosters.